Hello everyone. For those of you who may not be aware, on the 4th of December 2020, Eltiona Skana was found not guilty of murdering 7-year-old Emily Jones in Queen's Park, Bolton on the 22nd of March this year. Instead, she was convicted of manslaughter after admitting so on the grounds of diminished responsibility. So far in my true crime series, we've gone over cases where the punishment handed out for the crimes committed seemed questionable at the time. For example, the 7.5 years for attempted murder Mick Philpott received for his horrendous attack on Kim Hill, for which he served less than 4. He, along with his wife Mairead and accomplice Paul Mosley, would torch their home, killing 6 of their children. You can watch my video here which goes over this case, but Mairead, who was handed a 17-year sentence for her involvement in 2013, walked free after serving less than half her sentence. And of course there's the case of Vincent Lee, who killed Tim McLean in Canada, which you can find more about here. However, he also walks a free man, with an expunged record. I felt the need to prioritise this case because of the conversation taking place right now over the verdict. While I know that there are those talking about Eltiona's immigration status at the time of the attack, this isn't why I'm making the video. Any references to her immigration status will be for factual purposes only. I want to hone in on the facts surrounding this case in an attempt to provide you with more insight as to how this decision came to be. I also won't be using any pictures of Emily, out of respect for the family's wishes. On the 22nd of March 2020, Mother's Day, Emily Jones was with her father, Mark Jones, where in the afternoon they visited Queen's Park in Bolton to meet Emily's mother, Sarah Barnes, who went out for a run in the park that day. Emily was on her scooter and was riding close by to her father. Emily noticed her mother in the distance and asked her dad if she could ride ahead to meet up with her, to which he agreed. However, as she was riding along, she caught the attention of a woman who was sat at a park bench. That woman was Eltiona Skana. Suddenly, and without warning, Eltiona got up from the bench, and as Emily rode past, she grabbed the young girl, and using a craft knife she had purchased earlier in the day, she slit Emily's throat and threw her to the ground in front of everyone at the park. Eltiona then attempted to flee the scene, but was stopped by Tony Canty after he and his wife Lindsay witnessed the attack. Tony gave chase, knocking her to the ground and detaining Eltiona until police arrived. Mark's view was momentarily blocked as another couple walked past, and was initially unaware as to what had happened. He thought Emily had fallen off her scooter and Skana was trying to help her, although it wasn't until he heard someone shout, "She's been stabbed," that the horrific reality set in. He would run to his daughter and cradle her, as members of the public and a woman thought to be a nurse would administer first aid in an attempt to keep Emily alive while paramedics were on their way. Paramedics would arrive and an air ambulance would be called, where Emily would be airlifted to Salford Royal. However, she would go into cardiac arrest. At 3:56 p.m. the same day, Emily would succumb to her injuries. Emily's mother would be in the room with her at the time. Tony Canty would say that while he was restraining Eltiona, he would hear her say that she tried to kill me, apparently referring to Emily. She also mentioned injections and pigs, as well as other ramblings. When police arrived, they immediately arrested Eltiona and detained her under the Mental Health Act. Initially, it was reported that the attacker was a Somalian woman. However, this turned out not to be the case, as Eltiona originally came from Albania. The trial began on the 26th of November 2020. Prosecutor Michael Brady, QC, would open proceedings with a statement of the events which took place on the 22nd of March 2020. Tony Canty would be called to give testimony as to the events that unfolded, as well as his involvement. The prosecution would explain their case after hearing from Canty. They would acknowledge that at an earlier hearing, Skana entered a guilty plea to manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility. He would also say that it was accepted that Skana has experienced mental health issues for a number of years, but that it was down to the jury to decide whether this was a murder or manslaughter. Mr. Brady explains to the court that witnesses Hassan Ahmed and his wife Florentina were also witnesses to the attack. Their accounts would echo the known events that took place. Mr. Brady would tell the jury that after her arrest, Skana was taken to North Manchester Police Station, where she was assessed by an on-call doctor Dr. Farrell. She would tell the doctor that she was a paranoid schizophrenic, and also said she would sometimes hear voices and would get violent. She had said that this had not happened in the days leading up to the incident. She was also described as guarded and suspicious during her interview. She was later sent to the Edenfield Centre in Prestwich for further assessment. After lunch, Mr. Brady continued to explain the prosecution's case. He began by discussing a conversation which took place between Skana and Dr. Sullivan at the Edenfield Medical Centre. Skana told the doctor that she had been out in the morning of the attack to buy a knife, as she felt unsafe. However, she wouldn't explain why. Afterwards, she would be transferred to the Rampton Hospital in Nottinghamshire. This was a psychiatric hospital where she had remained since. While she was at Rampton Hospital, she would be treated by Dr. Saeed Afghan, who was also responsible for assessing and caring for Eltiona Skana. He would tell of several incidents while she was at the hospital. These incidents included her saying she could hear voices, as well as on another occasion, where she would speak loudly in what was assumed to be Albanian while playing a game with other patients. Although when she was asked about the latter incident, she said that the words were not hers, but from God. The court would also hear that in a discussion with a Mr. Petit, a member of staff at Rampton, that she was hearing voices in the run-up to the attack, although this would contradict statements she made in earlier interviews, as the court were also told that Skana had told Petit that the attack was premeditated. She said she waited in the park and picked her victim, and once she had done what she did, she attempted to run away. Expanding on Skana's behaviour at the Rampton Hospital, the jury were told of one time where Skana threatened to kill members of staff and their families, although when asked, she would say she was psychotic. She also told Dr. Afghan that prior to her coming to the UK in 2014, she felt that she was fine. Mr. Brady would also expand on Skana's history of psychotic incidents. It's revealed that she was admitted to hospital in 2015 after wielding a weapon against her neighbours. Then, in 2017, she would bite her mother, stab her through her hand, and strike her mother on the head with an iron. Shortly after this incident, she would threaten her sister, who had to lock herself in the bathroom where she would contact police. But by the time they arrived, she had left to go to a friend's home, where she asked to see her friend's daughter for no apparent reason. The jury hear she wasn't allowed to do this. After, Mr. Brady moves on, where he discusses 3 psychiatrists who have given their opinions on the case. They are Dr. Crosby, Dr. Whitworth, and as I mentioned before, Dr. Afghan. The first 2 doctors agree she may have had a psychotic episode, which led to the incident, and has a partial defence to manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility. However, the jury hears that Dr. Afghan doesn't share this view, and isn't convinced her mental health problem would have sustainably impaired her decision-making. The judge presiding over the case then explains to the jury the legal framework surrounding the case. He explains that the prosecution's argument is that this is murder, whereas the defence would argue that this is manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility in relation to the defendant's mental illness. He then explains that diminished responsibility comes if she was suffering from an abnormality of mental functioning, which arose from a recognised medical condition and substantially impaired her ability to do one or more of the following: understand the nature of her conduct, and or form a rational judgment, and or exercise self-control. This has to have caused or been a significant factor in causing Skana to kill Emily. The court then hears from Emily's father, Mark. He would tell the court what had taken place on the day of the incident. Afterwards, the jury was shown CCTV footage of Skana travelling to Bolton town centre, where she visited a Pound Empire shop and bought a pack of 3 craft knives. After reviewing her movements that day, the court adjourns for the day. After a technical delay, Dr. Farrell, the first doctor to assess Skana on the day of the attack, is brought in to give evidence. She would tell the court that Skana was calm and generally cooperative. Dr. Farrell also says Skana would tell her that she was feeling not very well, and had felt this way for some time. Skana would say she had not been hearing voices in her head since 2017, and admitted to feeling paranoid, as well as having the feeling that others wanted to hurt her. Skana also told the doctor she sometimes felt broadcasts on the TV or radio had special messages for her, especially when people's eyes have expressions. It's then revealed that around 4 months prior to the attack, Skana told Dr. Farrell that her medication had changed from an injected antipsychotic medication to one which was taken orally. She had previously been on the injections for approximately 3 years. Skana would say to Farrell that the previous medication would constantly make her feel paranoid. She would say she didn't recall anything that happened on the day of the attack. Dr. Farrell was also asked by Skana about other people putting thoughts into her head, as she suspected that may have happened to her at the time. Dr. Farrell would say that during her interview with Skana, she would be emotionless and took a long time to answer questions, as though she was either hiding her feelings or was distracted, an indication that she could have been hearing voices while trying to respond. The defense would then take over and discuss the medication. They would ask what the advantages of injected antipsychotics would be. Dr. Farrell explained that injected medication is administered directly, meaning they know the patient has taken the medication, whereas in tablet form, it's entirely down to the patient themselves. After a lunch break, Dr. Victoria Sullivan would then take the stand. Dr. Sullivan worked at the Edenfield Centre and would tell the prosecution that Skana suffered from delusional beliefs. She would have visions of a number of people who to her were frightening. She also said that Skana would see angels. The third day of the trial consisted mainly of the court hearing the 999 call made by Tony Canty, as well as video footage. In the footage of her arrest, she gives her name and address to police, and when asked what she had in her bag, she replies, "Not a bomb, just my ID card and my mum's ID card." The court would hear various witness testimonies from those that were there that day, as well as the paramedics who responded to the scene. Victoria Fagan, the community mental health nurse who treated Eltiona Skana, was called to give testimony. She would tell the court that the defendant was being treated by Bolton's early intervention mental health team, who would generally take care of an individual for about 3 years. Fagan took over Skana's care when she was passed over to the community mental health team in 2019. The jury would hear a line from a report Victoria Fagan wrote following an assessment of the defendant in December 2018. This read, "I note in my entry that Miss Skana was clean and well kept in her appearance, which is associated with good mental health. I also note that her concentration was good and her responses reactive." Fagan would tell the court that Skana's medication was changed in 2019 following complaints that she was feeling more paranoid, especially at night time. She said Skana told her that she wasn't sleeping well, and at one point she thought people on the train could read her thoughts, and so she wouldn't look them in the eye. She had been on an antipsychotic medication which was administered once a month. However, this was switched to an oral medication which she was responsible for taking herself. This happened following a meeting with a community doctor, which happened while Fagan was on annual leave. Fagan said she had concerns about the change in medication because of her previous history. She said that she had concerns when Eltiona was taken off the injections, as she could relapse, so she increased her visits, although there was no change in her presentation. The defence asked Fagan if she could be sure that Skana was taking the antipsychotic tablets that she was being prescribed. She would be given a 100 microgram tablet to take in the morning and a 300 microgram tablet to take at night. The defence also said that she would run out of medication and need to get a new prescription each month. Victoria Fagan agreed with this. However, the defence tells the court that, following the events of March 22nd, police searched Skana's home and found unused medication. The defence would then tell the court that, so far as the police search of Miss Skana's flat was concerned, they found an excess of about a month's worth of medication. Later, DC Elizabeth Sexton, who helped coordinate an examination of Eltiona Skana after she was brought to North Manchester Police Station on March 22nd, would tell the court that a crime scene investigator who was examining Skana discovered wire wrapped around her toes. She would go on to describe what happened. I was stood outside the door of the cell when the crime scene investigator told me she had noticed some wire wrapped around the toes of Miss Skana. I asked what that was for, and she said that it was to help with her emotions. She would tell the jury that the wires appeared to be wrapped tightly around Skana's toes, and that at one point she had tried to tighten them, but she took them off when she was asked to. Jonathan Petit, a trained mental health nurse and a team leader who treated Eltiona Skana at Brampton Hospital, would be next to give evidence. He said that on the 16th of August, he would have a meeting with Skana. He asked why she was in the hospital. She replied, "I killed someone, that's why I'm here. It's been 3 months. I just want to put it behind me." It was this conversation where Petit would say Skana said the attack was premeditated. When asked how she was feeling at Brampton, Petit said that Skana replied with the following: "What do you want me to do? Cry all the time?" On this day of the trial, we would go on to learn more about the life of Eltiona Skana. Skana was born in Albania on the 24th of February 1990. In February 2012, she would leave Albania and move to Kuwait with her husband. However, in September 2013, she would return to her family in Albania. In July 2014, Skana left Albania again and travelled to Frankfurt, Germany. The following month, she would travel to the UK on a lorry. She said this trip was arranged by her sister. Upon her arrival, Skana would apply for asylum. This was refused by the Home Office in June 2018, but would be reversed on appeal. Skana was given a residency permit to remain in the UK until the 28th of November 2020, and then leave to remain until November 2024. In March 2015, a doctor assessed Skana as suffering from PTSD, and she was referred for treatment. In July that year, Skana was sectioned and admitted to the psychiatric unit at the Royal Bolton Hospital after her sister reported that she had grabbed a knife, thinking she would be attacked and wanted to protect herself. Skana was assessed as having psychotic ideas and stated that neighbours were planning on harming her by using electricity. Whilst detained under the Mental Health Act, Skana ran off several times whilst granted leave from hospital and had to be returned. She refused oral medication and so was prescribed injections of antipsychotic drugs. Skana would describe psychotic symptoms to doctors, but she would deny she was ill. The prosecution would tell the court that Skana liked to go to the park when frightened, as it helped her relax. Skana appealed against her detention under the Mental Health Act but lost, although she was deemed well enough to be released into the community on the 20th of August 2018, as her feelings of persecution and beliefs in being harmed by neighbours and electricity had reduced. She was visited at home up to twice a week by mental health workers, but complained that the injections she was receiving had side effects. Due to concerns about her physical health, her antipsychotic medication was stopped in November 2015, but on the 9th of December, at Salford Royal Hospital, she told doctors that she heard voices daily. In January 2017, she didn't attend an appointment and said she didn't want to engage with mental health services. She also refused to let her care coordinator in when she visited. Arrangements were made with Skana's sister, who was worried that she was relapsing, for them to return on the 13th of February. But on the 12th of February, Skana was arrested by police after she attacked her mother with an iron. Skana's mother had visited her, and Skana had taken her upstairs, chaining the door. The prosecution explained to the court that she began saying when she killed her mother, then everything would be okay. However, a friend intervened and Skana was arrested. It was discovered that she had also disconnected the electricity to the property's boiler, removed light bulbs, and thrown away her TV. Skana was detained again under the Mental Health Act and claimed since coming to the UK, her eyes and skin had been burning. But Skana would later leave the hospital she was staying in without leave and turned up at a friend's house, asking to speak to her daughter. Skana was asked about her haircut. She said that she cut her hair off rather than cutting off people's heads. Skana would be returned to hospital, this time in handcuffs by police. However, doctors decided she was well enough to be discharged back into the community on the 4th of May 2017. Up until March 2018, there were no reported concerns over Skana's mental state. However, it was at this time where she reported being unwell, having hallucinations, and asked to go back on injections. She denied hearing voices or having thoughts of harming herself or others. In 2019, she asked to come off injections and return to oral medication. The court heard that she remained stable on injections, managing her paranoia with family support, avoiding eye contact in busy places, and wearing sunglasses. Dr. John Crosby, a consultant at Ashworth Hospital, gave evidence based on his findings when examining Skana. After reviewing her medical history, as well as conducting 2 meetings with her via video link, he declared to the jury that there was ample material to support a diagnosis of paranoid schizophrenia. On the 6th day, it was the turn of Dr. Saeed Afghan to give evidence. Upon treating Skana from June 2020, initially he disagreed with the diagnosis of paranoid schizophrenia. He met Skana the previous month, where he described her as very pleasant and settled, but said she did say she was seeing and hearing things, although she wouldn't say what she was seeing or hearing. During this initial meet, she was open and candid. Dr. Afghan said he saw no psychotic symptoms. That same month, Skana requested to reduce her medication. Dr. Afghan agreed to a trial period where she would be taken off of her medication. This was because he considered her to be in a safe place. He also wanted to treat her as a clean slate. Skana would be weaned off the medication from early July. Initially, Skana seemed to respond well, saying that she began to hear less voices in her head and no longer felt heavy. However, on the 30th of July, she began to act strangely. Skana was speaking in a foreign language, where she stared into one of the medical staff's faces and asked, "Am I going to die very soon?" Skana's sister also said to Dr. Afghan that Skana was seeing things in the sky. At this point, Dr. Afghan became concerned. He had also said that Skana became quite angry with him, as she believed that Afghan didn't believe she was psychotic. As time went on, her symptoms would gradually return. She complained of her skin burning and interference from electrical energy. On the 5th of August 2020, she was watching TV when she saw a child who looked similar to Emily. Upon seeing the girl, Skana began to laugh hysterically. She would continue to exhibit bizarre behaviour under his care and would become threatening towards staff at the hospital. On one occasion, Dr. Afghan would say that Skana stated she wasn't responsible for threatening staff, as she was psychotic. She would blame the Home Office and the injections for making her into a psychopath. She would also froth at the mouth and had to be talked to through a hatch. Eventually, she was placed back on antipsychotic medication from the 16th of October, where her condition stabilised again shortly after. Upon reflection, Dr. Afghan told the court that at the time he didn't believe he had all the information required to make an accurate diagnosis of Skana, as he didn't have all the notes relating to her, although it appeared that he too was convinced of Skana's psychosis. Michael Brady, prosecuting, told the court that there was no realistic prospect of a conviction on the murder charge levied against Skana. They proceeded to withdraw the murder charge. The judge then instructed the jury to return a not guilty verdict for the murder of Emily Jones. As Eltiona Skana admitted to manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility, the judge accepted this. Despite the lesser conviction given, Skana could still potentially be handed a maximum sentence, up to life imprisonment, although we won't know exactly what the punishment will be until Eltiona Skana is sentenced on Tuesday the 8th of December 2020. Skana had a long documented record of mental illness. While there is no doubt that the crime was a horrific one, which should deserve maximum punishment, the prosecution were always going to face a difficult task of obtaining a murder conviction, as Skana met the criteria for diminished responsibility. There is a 4-stage test, of which all 4 elements must be proved. 1. Whether the defendant was suffering from an abnormality of mental functioning. 2. If so, whether it had arisen from a recognised medical condition. 3. If so, whether it had substantially impaired his ability either to understand the nature of his conduct or to form a rational judgment or to exercise self-control, or any combination. 4. If so, whether it provided an explanation for his conduct. As a result of the evidence gathered from the medical personnel who assessed Eltiona Skana, they determined that she was able to meet all the criteria based on their findings. Like many others who have expressed outrage over the verdict, I too am extremely frustrated that a murder conviction wasn't achieved. Yet again, we seem to be dealing with a case where, despite the verdict being legally correct, it's wholly a morally wrong one. As I mentioned, the sentencing will take place on Tuesday the 8th of December, so we'll know more then. I'll provide an update once we know more. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch the video. I hope that you found the information provided useful. I appreciate that for many of you, the information I provided won't make the actual verdict any easier, but I hope that I provided some clarity around how this decision came to be made. Finally, my sincere condolences go out to Mark, Sarah, and their friends and family. Thank you once again, and until next time, goodbye. For now.